Well, hi, Rebecca. I'm so excited to have you today on the Seeking Sunshine podcast. How are you?
Hey, I'm doing awesome. How are you doing today?
I am doing great. I'm so excited to talk to you about doing the things that you love to do, doing what lights you up as a mom and just as a human being, because life can be really distracting. It can be really hard to get through all the things that we have to do and find ways to do the things that we love. So I would love to hear the ways in which you've been able to do that in your life.
Oh my gosh, I'm in a different season of mothering than you. I am an empty nester, and my son just turned 21, so he's a true grown up. But we were just talking a minute ago, and yeah, you're always a mom. It's the reason I do anything. I can't explain it otherwise than my son is my why, and he is the first thing that really lit me up. I'm a great teacher. And I've been doing that for 24 years. But when he was born 21 years ago, he really gave me a good reason to be the best role model for myself, to go for everything passionately in my own life. And boy, does he follow suit. He has a lot of his mom in him. And that's a good and a bad thing sometimes because when we go for things, we go all out.
And that's a beautiful way to be. There's a lot of disappointment and emotion and heartache in going all in for everything you do, but it's also a really beautiful way to be because I'm also like that.
It is. I just got back from seeing him for his birthday and we spent Easter together. And I am on spring break. I have had 2 weeks to be a human being again and spend those couple days just being in his presence and being a mom, and it really just filled my cup so much. But at the same time, I came home so energized that right now I've been balancing a podcast, writing a new book, launching a course. Um, Today I'm editing a school newspaper. I always have something that's energizing me and making me happy. And the happiest thing that I like to do is make sure that other people's voices are heard in some way, shape, or form.
Mm.
So anything to do with writing or making sure that somebody who thinks that their story doesn't matter is captured and celebrated. I'm all about that.
That's one of my favorite topics ever. Will you talk to us more about that? Because that is something that lights me up a ton because when I started my podcast, it changed my whole life. It changed my whole world because I had felt really trapped in motherhood and like I was all alone in my journey. And then connecting to other people with my show and interviewing them and hearing about their stories just opened up the whole world for me. So tell me about how, why is that your passion? How did that come to be?
I'm trained as an English teacher and I've served in middle schools, high schools, colleges as a formal English instructor. So I've taught people as young as 5th grade all the way through people in their 70s how to read and write and feel confident with what to do with their own literacy, whether that be going to get a job, go to college, break up with a boyfriend, whatever the case may be, making sure that they are being authentic. But one of the tools that has mattered to me most is journaling and hearing your own inner still small voice first, making sure that you know that that voice matters before you bring it to the world. And I felt that that was the thing that really equipped me to be brave enough to do podcasting myself. I went through a course, a very similar course that you did, I'm sure. And when my book launch specialist, I was writing a book at the time, said, "You should have a podcast." I laughed. I'm like, "I'm in this course that I'm learning about that, but I would never do that." "No, you should really do that." And I thought to myself, "I'm an introvert. Who's going to want to hear my little quiet stories that you can pick up quietly in a book and go through? And I'm a journaler, I'm quiet. Who's going to want to hear my stories?" But the minute that I let the floodgates loose. And it was almost 2 years ago now. It'll be 2 years on April 24th. I
Yay.
felt something light up inside me that I can't even describe just because I was finally sharing my little quiet voice. bravely with the world. And even if one person heard it and I know that it validated what was going on inside me, I knew that when I was interviewing other people, that same light was going to be lit up. And that just means so much to me.
It's amazing, and I think that big truth here is that the only person you actually need permission from is yourself. You don't need some, person in a chair somewhere with authority telling you that your voice matters, that your story is worthwhile, that your trauma was significant. You just
Right.
need to give yourself permission to
And
be
yeah,
validated.
that's what it is. And self-validation is important. Recognizing with a loving light everything that you have been through. Big T trauma, little T trauma, the joys, the sorrows, the wanting to pull your hair out and sit on the floor crying with your kid. um, all of those things matter. Being vulnerable is one of the most important tools to resiliency. And Brene Brown happens to be one of my heroes, but there are so
Mm,
many people
love her.
now having the guts to say, you can be real, REAL versus REEL, real,
Mhm.
on the Instagram or whatever social media platform. And I think podcasting is genuine because you dip your toe into that vulnerability where people hear your stories, but you may not be ready to be seen. But that may be the next step. It really prepares you baby step by baby step to go and share whatever it is your truth is. I know people who do podcasting about cooking. I know people who do podcasting about art. I know people who do podcasting about whatever lights them up. And when I write for Women Who Podcast magazine, highlighting those women and whatever makes them passionately come alive is worth celebrating. And I can't imagine spending, I wouldn't want to spend my time when I'm quote unquote bored doing anything other than listening to a podcast and cheering people on and how they're showing up.
And the amazing thing is that when you hear somebody else talking about what lights them up, it lights you up in turn. Like, that light spreads, it's contagious, and it's the greatest thing of all time because even if cooking doesn't light me up, hearing somebody else talk about how cooking lights them up, bam, you will feel their energy and you will take it in yourself, and it will just inspire you to go do whatever does light you up. It's That's how we light the world on fire in the best possible way, is by sharing our
Yeah.
passions.
And we need that. And we need moms talking about how hard it is to put your kid down for a nap when they're a certain age. And we need moms like myself talking about crying their eyes out for a whole week when my son finally left the nest. We need people to be real wherever they're at. Right now I'm in a stage where I'm going to be 50 soon. I'm talking about that menopause thing. Just whatever the topic may be, as long as we know that we have one another, we have somebody else to talk to, that we're not in some isolated bubble going through it alone. That takes half of the trauma out of anything that we're experiencing.
Absolutely. I was just told last night, this is not from me because somebody wanted to quote me and I was like, I didn't say this. Shame thrives in secrecy. And it really does. And when you are feeling shame, and like Brene Brown talks about shame all the time, and it's such a beautiful work. Shame is the only thing that we can't like come to terms with because it's so not real. It's so unhelpful. It's such an unnecessary emotion. It's all based in lies. Like,
Yes.
it's based in the lie that you have to be perfect. You have to be not you in order to be successful, in order to be accepted, when the actual truth is that you are so beautifully and perfectly human, exactly as you are, and so is everybody else. And you don't need to squeeze yourself into that box that doesn't actually exist.
Right. And mental health really does matter. And one of the things that I stand for in my classroom, in my life, in my writing, and in everything I do is that you need to take care of the person behind whatever that passion is. And if sometimes you need to put on a slow down, a pause, a full stop, it's okay. It's okay to just ground yourself and shower yourself with love again. It doesn't mean you're hiding in the shame closet, but when you come back out again, knowing that there are people there for you, knowing that it's okay
Yeah.
to tell your story because it gives somebody else the strength and the bravery to tell their own. We go through so many ugly and scary seasons. And today I did a post on Instagram about rainbows. I have my kids make the most beautiful rainbow paintings in my classroom. And they were just having a great time in April, just before break. But there's going to be the rainbows, but behind the rainbows, there's always the rain. And people don't talk about the rain. They just want to focus on the rainbows, but they're both there. And in both of those things, there's the love. There's the love holding you. And that's what we need to be more vulnerable about because we can love one another through these things versus hide.
Yep, absolutely. And rainbows are so beautiful. They're such a beautiful metaphor and thing to experience because rainbows are light shining through the rain. They're literally, it's the light coming through, what you could perceive as sadness. And you've got all the storm clouds that hang over, and it feels like darkness. And it's when the light shines through and you have that really stark contrast that it's the most beautiful. It's when you have contrast that you can see the rainbow. And if you didn't have the contrast, you wouldn't have the rainbow.
Right.
We have to have the contrast. That's where the beauty really shines.
I wanted to be an author my whole life since I was 8 years old. And I wrote about, you know, a whole bunch of really dark times when I finally got my first book to come out. But if I hadn't gone through a really dark season in my adulthood, that book would have never been written because I wouldn't have had anything to write about. I wouldn't have had to go chasing the rainbows within myself. I wouldn't have had to go looking for the light that I thought was turned off.
Mm,
And I mean, everybody knows COVID times were really difficult for so many people, and so many people lost people. And we're just starting to hear the good stories that came from those
yeah.
because people have had time to reflect and people have had time to kind of process everything that went on. And I'm very thankful that I did have a really dark season so that I could kind of get gritty and right through to the other side. And it's changed who I am because it's also given me appreciation. And when we can find that appreciation in that contrast, I think is when we start to grow. It's never too late to grow, no matter if you're, a little kid, which I love watching my little third graders bloom, or whether you're 50 going on 60, it doesn't matter.
Oh, I love that so much. It's never too late to grow and it's never too late to bloom. And I love, I feel like one of the themes that keeps coming back is that when you use language to process the things that you've been through in your life, whether that's journaling and writing it out, or whether that's speaking it out in storytelling and in podcasting and in for me, it's for music. I've used music a lot of my life to process my emotions, but using your voice or using, the pen to write through, finding a way to put what has happened to you into words is so cathartic. And it will literally change the way that you process what has happened. And it will change the way that you are able to see your story. And I bet that you have had a really incredible experiences in your own life as you've processed what's happened to you, but also as you've seen other people go through that same journey. Do you have any stories that go along with that?
So I have a million. And that's why when I thought about giving up teaching completely because I was so burnt out after
Yeah,
COVID. Oh my
teaching is
gosh.
so difficult. I have so
But
much respect for teachers, and I have to say
oh,
that, and I say that every time I get the opportunity to talk to a teacher on my podcast because teaching is such it should be the most revered profession in our
thank you.
entire society because you are literally shaping our future. And I wish that we as a society had more respect for our teachers.
Well, I appreciate that. And we, as teachers, though, should also be having really functional and beautiful relationships with our parents because you are the primary teachers. And at my school, that's huge. I work in a private school, and the number one teacher is the parent first. That gets lost a lot of times in public schools just because of the size. I hate to say that,
Yeah.
but
Yep.
you have so many kids on your hands, but when you have a smaller environment, you're really able to work on those relationships and drive that home. So I'm thankful to you and all you're doing with your children, knowing them best in their natural environment to bring them to the classroom for what we can do to kind of put the icing on the cake, so to say. But yeah, my goodness, I've been teaching for 24 years. I took one solid year off last year to work at Life is Good, which is like one of the happiest places on the planet to work. Um, I also took 3 years off when about 3 years, 2.5 years when my son was little. I knew something was different and we found out he had autism, but he also had chronic ear infections. So you try sending a kid to daycare that's coming home every other week with a fever. Your boss doesn't like that. You have to
Nope.
you have to take all that time off. So I said, well, I'm just going to enjoy this season. And so we got paid to invite 5 other kids to come over and play. Legally, I became a registered New York State daycare provider, and I taught kinder music too. So I don't
How
have the
fun.
musical abilities you do, but boy, did we have fun learning through language. But
Oh, but music is so much fun. Whether, I mean, you don't have to have, you know, I don't know, you don't have to be able to sing to enjoy singing with kids. Singing with kids is like the greatest, most fun thing you can ever do.
it is. I grew up singing, and I found out through my adulthood journey, I eventually met my birth family that my dad, who passed away during COVID from COVID, but he was a thriving musician. He was a teacher at a community college. He was a private musician. He had a studio, everything else. So I came from music. My son is a musician himself, but I can't read music. I just hear it and I know it by ear. So it's kind of funny.
Well,
Um,
and I should say that everyone can sing. It's just whether or not you think you can sing. There's
with confidence. Yeah, that's true. That's like I say, anybody can write, but can you write with confidence? And I guess that's what I've seen. I have seen children walk themselves through the most horrific situations at young middle school and high school ages, thanks to their resiliency and thanks to their ability to advocate for themselves. And some of the essays that I've seen children write to get into college really took the most guts I've ever seen in a human being. Some of the papers that I sat with people crying at the writing center table going, I don't know if I can do this another day with the 3 kids I have home and the tests and the this. And I had a student living out of her car who is now a professional therapist, just pushing yourself through with that word. And especially with someone at your side, I happen to be a writing center tutor as well as an instructor. Just knowing you have someone there to validate you and push you, but not focus on all the stupid stuff. I hate to say it like that, but the perfect grammar and this and that. We can fix all those things. But if you are bringing your heart and your soul to the table, we can work with you to craft what you want to say in a very eloquent and powerful way that's going to serve you. And that's what I've loved watching. I've loved watching the stories that you would see on a really interesting TV drama in my classroom or at my writing center table and what happened with those folks. They didn't call me a resiliency specialist and a retention specialist for nothing because I put the person first. And I love putting the person first when it comes to putting the pen to paper because they are going to take that ink, and that ink comes from their heart, and they are going to transform that into whatever they see as gold. And I've seen students get scholarships. I've seen students get into school. I've seen students confront their parents about what they feel their identity is, whatever that may be. I've walked a teenager or 4, now that I think about it, through teenage pregnancy. I've sat with moms who have faced autism diagnosis. I've sat with women who didn't believe in God to all of a sudden acknowledging that there is a higher power and it's inside them, happy to help them through life. All this because I like helping people write, which is fun.
It's an incredible tool. And one thing I want to point out that I think is really incredible is I feel like we're leaning towards this in our society as we get away from the perfectionism, as we get away from in this context, it's okay, you have to have perfect grammar, you have to have everything just so. And we're getting to this place where it's like, it's actually acceptable. It's not the end of the world if you have writing errors. Like, we're actually seeing published books where it's like, that's an incomplete sentence. And it's like, no, that's how we speak. Like, we're starting to see professional writing where it looks more like the way that we actually speak because we don't speak that way.
We
And
don't speak for peer-reviewed journals.
right.
That's wonderful that they're there, and I'm glad that some people enjoy doing that work, but that's the reason I don't have a PhD, because to me, that doesn't sound fun at all. I have a lot of respect for my PhD friends, but that was not something that I ever wanted to do. I have the experience of life and working with people in what I call the trenches, of classrooms,
Yeah.
really
And the
getting to the
ability
real stuff.
Yeah, the ability for each of us, but especially when you're new at something like these kids are, and when you're in the rough, raw patches of life, like the ability to be accepted in your mess and to show up messy and to start to process your emotions in your life and your experiences just messy. Like, you don't have to have perfect grammar. You don't have to show up, you know, appropriately. You don't have
Right.
to do everything right in order to then process all the things and do it all. You get to just show up messy and start to work through it. And the beauty and the benefit of just getting the work done and doing what needs to be done in whatever way it starts to come out.
Right. And that's one of the reasons I love the grade shift that I've made. So, I mean, I was doing pretty serious teaching. Some of the time it was like advanced placement classes and college writing classes and, New York State tests, which don't even get me started with that. But, just different tests that students have to take to show mastery. It's okay. They're going to show mastery eventually, but each of them has their own zone of development. And if something is in the way of that development, it's going to be at a different time than March 28th or, whatever day that they
Yeah.
choose. And with these young ones, I love doing things messy. I have colleagues that have the most beautiful Pinterest classrooms that, I call them, and they have their way. But mine looks more like a preschool classroom because we are just doing it super messy and we are celebrating our work every day. It's You walk into my room and it's just fun, but we do manage to meet the standards and to raise the bar. And I have a very high bar, but my kids know that any day that they're in there, if they mess up, it's okay. I am going to love them for whatever we're doing. They know that I'm new at teaching math and don't do the best job yet. Um, we've taught each other that we're good at some things and we're not so good at other things. And we have a class Furby that doesn't talk. I have the kids use their imagination, but they begged me for one of those crazy Furbies. They know that imperfection is accepted there because to me, they're perfectly beautiful just as they are.
Well, and what a great environment to learn and grow in. What a beautiful, garden to blossom in when there gets to be dirt around because you you can't grow in concrete. You can't
Right.
blossom when in a sterile environment. You
No.
need to have, the fertile soil to grow in. We need that as human beings, and we so often don't give that to ourselves. Like, it's awesome that we are trying maybe more and more and more to give it to our kids, but how often are we giving it to ourselves too? How
Right.
often are we looking at our own selves and being really perfectionistic and having these thoughts of not feeling good enough because we didn't measure up and slamming ourselves over and over and over and over again? We have to start practicing letting that go and allowing
Yes.
ourselves to show up messy, because the more that we allow ourselves to do that, the more we're going to allow our kids and those around us to do that too. Because if we think that we can let them do it, but not ourselves do it, we're kidding ourselves.
Right. And it gives people, especially children, when they're met where they're at, the ability to know that that soil, that dirt that they're going to grow in, yeah, it's gross. And sometimes life doesn't feel okay. And it's okay for them to show up with those messy emotions and those tantrums that are ugly and all the things that come with children. But when they go through the process and they see that even though that dirt was messy and gross and stinky sometimes,
And there were worms in it.
exactly, and rocks and oh no, yeah,
Yeah.
I let my kids get so messy. Each of them has a plant that two of them have had to replant, and they've seen that whole process. And we have all the all the acknowledgement of how things grow. But I love it when we meet children and adults where they're at, because you have to know that you're going to get up the next day, and it may not be perfect tomorrow, and it may not be perfect a week from that or a year, but it's going to be okay and it's going to be beautiful. The most beautiful arrangements of flowers, in my opinion, are the ones that are wild, the
Mm,
ones that you put together in a vase that even if your 5-year-old brought them into you and is half dandelions, I appreciate those the most.
and roses come with thorns, and the
Right,
prettiest flowers have little prickles on them. Like, there is contrast all
right,
around us, and we have to be able to see the beauty because of the contrast in
exactly.
the contrast.
Exactly. The like today, just to be completely vulnerable, I've become a new entrepreneur, and that's one of the scariest titles that I've ever stepped into, because it comes with so much baggage and responsibility and judgment, and
Mhm.
just you can make it a million things. But I finally made some money for the first time in my life over the last couple days for something I put into the world.
Woo! Let's cheer you on for that.
And
Let's do it.
it felt a little contrasty. It felt a little funny, but immediately I went and paid a bunch of bills because that's the responsible thing to do. But just to know that I was able to step into a role and not have it all lined up with the perfect website, and the payment was a little wonky, and but everything worked out. And
Mm, do it
I have
messy.
this beautiful course I'm offering. I've done it for
Yay.
years in a classroom. I might as well do it for, adults. But that's one of the scariest things I've ever done in my life. And I did it at 49. I'm just really proud of myself today to know I'm doing something my kids do every day. I'm doing something I taught my son to do every day. I'm finally being a really, really good role model for my kid.
Well, and what's amazing is that, like, if you will have the courage to show up as you are, to show up authentically, to show up messy and imperfectly and human as you are, you will see that people will love you without you being cultivated in perfection and everything. You will see the rewards from it. You will see that it didn't have to be perfect, and that people will
Right.
forgive you if the payment thing doesn't work out perfectly, and if you don't have the website all built, and if there was a flaw in the thing, and if you do all the things. So tell us about your course, because now we have to hear about it.
Oh my gosh, I'm so pumped. So I have done courses in college where I present them in person. I've done them hybrid. I taught 2 years during COVID online. I was both for my school and for a professional tutoring company because I wanted some extra income during COVID. But this course is different because this course is everything that I've learned in most of my life from being a journaler. And then I've taken coursework through the Center for Journal Therapy. And I've also been doing a new kind of journaling since last summer that has completely changed my outlook on everything. And I kid you not, so for someone to say, I've been journaling all my life, but then I changed the way I did it, and it changed my body, my mind, and my spirit. I can take all those years of writing, teaching, all that experience that I built coursework and put it into what's coming from my heart and my life. And that combination, when I sat down yesterday working on some of the little details, I didn't notice time pass for 4 hours. I was completely just beaming with this warmth. I was smiling from ear to ear. I felt at ease and excited. I've never felt that before. Not all those things at one time. It was just something completely and naturally from the deepest, happiest part of myself. I'm bringing 40, I don't know, I've been journaling since I was 8. So 41 years of journaling and then 24 years of education. And then just since the summer, just having the courage to do something new, to have my own practice serve me better, to hold it out and say, hey, if this makes my life so joyful, why can't it do the same for you? So it's a 40-day course because that's approximately how many days it took me to really feel the results in my own life. It has a small container. I'm only accepting 12 students for this first time. There is a workbook, which I'm an author, so that's easy. And I'm a course designer. That was easy. It's still in progress, but they get to keep this workbook and have life access. So if they're not inspired by their journaling or they want to go back to the roots and the details, they can go back to the coursework. They can call me. All my students, I'm friends for life. So um, they'll have me at their side. But journaling
When
is
did
a
it
practice
launch?
that you take for yourself. So I'm
Love.
there to show the way. And it launches May 4th, May 9th. Um,
Perfect.
May 4th is my retreat beforehand. I'm very excited about a lot of things, but May 4th is the retreat. May 9th, the course starts and it goes until summer. So it's 6 weeks to sunshine.
Yay!
Yeah, 6 weeks to sunrise because that's the beginning of summer. And we have our graduation ceremony or retreat on June 20th when it becomes the new and happy, warm season that hopefully they'll feel inside just like I have through my own practice.
Oh, that's amazing. Do you have an easy to say link for that, or should we just throw the link in the show notes?
The link is associated with my new website, which is Padilla. So I don't have that I can just rattle off, but
Okay.
show notes would be
I'm
just
like,
fine. Thank you.
my course link is like to give it .com/this/that/this. So I'm like, that's
Yeah,
really complicated. So I get having a link that's like 1,000 years long. Just put it in the show notes. So we will have the link for that in the show notes. That's really, really exciting. But I know that you also, and that's amazing. I know you also have your podcast and your magazine. So if you have a second to share about that, that would be amazing too.
sure. I had never written journal style, like, journal, newspaper, anything like that. And I was brave. I applied to Women Who Podcast magazine last year and I had an opportunity to write and then they hired me as a staff writer. So I'm on the staff of Women Who Podcast magazine, which is incredible. I absolutely love interviewing people about all their podcasts. So it's not mine, but I am on the staff for it. And we celebrate anyone from someone under a year podcasting to someone who's been doing it for 5 to 10 years, but they have to have indie status. So they can't be a major
Yeah.
corporation sponsored. We stick with the people who aren't making it as much of a business, so to say. So to
Yeah.
celebrate their authenticity and their devotion to that audience in the world. So that's the magazine I write for, and my podcast is launching again. It's season 5. It's had a little bit of a, just like my life, an upgrade, and it's the Sacred Penny podcast, Journal Your Way to Brighter Days. So I focus on mental health, I focus on body, mind, and spirit, and my it's being trademarked, which is really exciting, to have something of your own. But my method of somatic meditative journaling is really steeped in making sure that you know that the person on the other side of that pen and journal is a sacred and loved source of wisdom, and that you can
Mm.
tap into that wisdom through the other side of your pen. So I lead people through that every week. My episodes come out on Wednesdays, and yeah, it's been 2 years, and I have a small following. I have like 6,000 followers, but the people and the DMs that they send me really warm my heart, and I'm just really happy to hold out, showing the way.
I love it. Your podcast is incredible, and you have so many amazing things that you are doing. Do you have any advice for busy moms who are trying to do more of the things they love, but life is busy and crazy and it's hard to find a way to do that?
Try to schedule something in just for you. I know life gets in the way. I remember, especially small children, and with my son, um, having significant special needs over time, both health and his mental health and everything. Just making sure that you try to schedule something in every day. It may not work out like my schedule because I'm, an empty nester now where I have this block of time in the morning and the evening, but making sure that if that half hour for yourself or that hour doesn't come at the time you want, just make sure that you can check it off by the end of the day. I don't care if that means you go for a walk at 9 o'clock at night by streetlight around the block. At least you took a walk and you got outside and you grounded those feet and you walked away from all that was behind you. But scheduling that time and making that a commitment to you, whatever it is that you do, whether it be a walk or journaling or whatever your favorite form of self care is, don't go to bed at night before checking that off in your mind. Put it on your calendar, put it on a sticky note, even if it's just a sticky note that says me, and you know what me means.
Mm.
Making sure that you check that box off every day, because without checking off that box, you're not going to be able to serve yourself or the people that you love. I used to journal during naps when I had a daycare. When they were all sleeping, I would just take whatever time to fold laundry and do my journaling. But just make sure that you give yourself that time because you won't regret it.
I love that so much. Thank you. All right, as we wrap up, do you have any final words of wisdom to share with us?
You're so cute. Just saying wisdom. I think wisdom comes with just making sure that you are living life authentically. Just be yourself. And the more that you show up as yourself, the real versus the REEL, there's going to be more people there willing to participate and love you through.
I love that. Thank you so much for coming today. This has been amazing.
Thank you so much.
Have a great day.
You too.